Hey, this is really an exciting opportunity for the federal government to be able to become. Oh, okay. That's a lot better. Hello. I was saying this is such a great opportunity for the federal government to be able to be represented here and to bring its message of safety. I tried to think of a way to affiliate our relationship to your interests, and safety is always a stripe that everyone wears. Despite what you might think of Congress and whether or not they're getting along, one thing they seem to absolutely agree on is the message of safety. And I hope that's true in your industry too. I'm here to convince you, of course, of the reason why it needs to be. And I started thinking, with faith, we often rely on faith as a part of our daily lives or the journey in our lives to get us through or take us to those places where we need some comfort and some hope when there's uncertainty. Well, one main difference here is I want to show you that in the analysis of going on faith, I'd like to convince you to add something to that, and it is, and going informed. All right? And what I mean by that is simply one thing that you'll see me or hear me say over and over again, and that is to look before you look. It's kind of an easy tenet to remember, but an important one. So what we'll be covering today really deals with that issue. We're going to talk a little bit about what's at stake. We want to let you know who we are and what we do. It was kind of hard for me to know just how much information to put in there. For some of you, this might be the first introduction to our agency and what it does, but that's absolutely paramount importance. And to some degree, the way we do what we do, so that it helps you use that information in a way that makes you make those safe determinations. So we're going to also talk about what you need to do, and I've said it before, you'll hear me say it again throughout this next day or two, but it is to look before you look. We're going to show you how you can go about doing that. And then throughout the presentation, we'll sort of be talking about some of the information that you need to look for when you go to our website and you look before you look. Going right into it, what's at stake becomes fairly and painfully obvious. I think a single slide absolutely covers it. I want to say that within the past month, within 2 days, there were as many accidents with fatalities in faith-driven vehicles. And that's a sad tragedy. We see that number represented throughout all types of transportation and all types of passenger transportation. But particularly in the faith industry, we like to emphasize that whether you are an owner-operator running your own vehicles or you're chartering services from a carrier in commercial for-hire business, it's so important to look before you look and to know about some of the safety considerations that ought to be made when you're dealing with this stuff. We have information that's going to help you with both. Because a lot of this stuff is pretty deep, and I have about 12 minutes from what I've told, I'm not going to try and fit everything into your brain in that short period of time. You would be overwhelmed, I promise you. But know through this message that what I'm really trying to say here is you need to look before you look. You need to know where to go to do that. And we're going to help you find out what you're looking for, what that information looks like, and the way we compile it. The best way to do that is to please come visit our booth. Some of you already have appointments with my counterpart, Brian Ronk, who is here. I'm going to be joining him during the marketplace. We're going to try and help you and do illustrations if need be. We've got a lot of helpful handouts, stuff that kind of translates this information into layperson's dialogue. I don't want to insult anyone's intelligence, but it does sort of pose some learning curves in terms of the way some of the information is compiled, but it is so reliable and it is so necessary. All right. So who we are is just like the United States Department of Transportation regulates the air industry through the FAA or the railroads through the Federal Railroad Administration. There's an industry that needs to be regulated on the roadways. The interstate travel of goods, whether it's freight, cargo, hazardous materials, or what we consider our most precious cargo, passengers. That would be us, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, whose business it is to write and regulate and enforce compliance with regulatory requirements of the government. One of the ways we do that is through our safety management system. We're all about compliance, safety, and accountability. And not surprisingly, the government always speaks in acronyms, so you'll hear CSA, Compliance, Safety, and Accountability, the SMS system, the Safety Management System, or Measurement System rather, BASICS, which deals with breaking down our regulations into several groups, about 7 of those groups, and measuring those against other carriers who have had an equivalent number of stops or violations that they've been cited with related specifically to that sort of safety regulation or a violation of it. We put those into what are called BASICS. To help you get some foundation of how you would go to find this information, what you need to do again is to look before you book in your efforts to choose these carriers. Well, you need to get to our webpage to start with. It looks something like that. I just pulled a typical example. The picture is going to change daily, but over here in the right corner, you're going to want to go into the consumers area. Once you get there, you'll see this page that pops up, and it's got all kinds of information, as you can see, that relates to bus travel and motor coach, filing complaints. Our Safer Bus mobile app is in there that I'll tell you about in a minute. And this is the way to get there. Since we're talking about the look before you book process, I've kind of decided to go with that one first. So here goes. Here's what the page would look like. And you see right out the get-go, there's a 3-step process of what they're advising you to do when you're going to consider booking these trips. Know the facts. In other words, know the stuff you got to look for. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Then you actually look before you book, armed with those ABCs of what you're looking for. And then finally, any issues that are found, you would report those to our National Consumer Complaints Database, the NCCDB. All right, so under step 1, those ABCs really relate to the 3 things you need to know. And they go something like this. You're going to look at the company's safety record. You're going to see that the driver that they're using is properly qualified. You can't pick who that driver's going to be, but you can certainly ask that company if they're requiring the right things and that driver is qualified. We'll get to that in a second. And then finally, planning a safe trip that has to do with our hours of service regulations. And that one has some of the highest amount of violations among all of the safety regulations that we do impose. And so we're going to talk about the strategies and considerations that are necessary when you think about those limited 10 hours maximum that driver can drive the vehicle. If your trip that you're planning is somewhere across the United States and it's 12 hours, you've got to work out with the carrier how they're going to handle that. Are they going to have an alternate driver? Are they going to provide an overnight and the driver gets the required 8 hours of rest before they can get back in that vehicle and drive your passengers? Those are things that you work out, and you have to be aware of the existence of those regulatory requirements. All right, so as we talked about, you're going to be looking at that history of the company. You're looking at the rating of that company, whether it's a satisfactory, conditional, or unsatisfactory. Unsatisfactory means that carrier is not eligible to participate or provide interstate transportation of passengers, at least during the time that they're wearing that safety moniker, if you will. A conditional means that they are on the borderline, they're on our radar, they don't have any violations, but they also don't have anything in place that suggests that they can comply completely with the necessary regulatory requirements. They can run legally, you can hire them, but you just need to have your awareness raised if it's a conditional. Satisfactory is the one that really evidences that the carrier is in full compliance and has all the pieces in place to comply with those regulatory requirements. All right, and then you look at the drivers I mentioned before. Do they have a CDL? If it's a 16 or more passenger, including the driver. If you're talking 9 to 15 van, a CDL or commercial driver's license would not be required. 16 or more passengers, including the driver, commercial driver's license required with a passenger endorsement. They also have to have a valid medical examiner's certificate affiliated with that commercial driver's license. The carrier has to be participating in a random drug and alcohol testing program. That's a requirement. The driver needs to inspect the vehicle before the trips. This is fair game for you to ask that carrier. Do you have drivers that are doing this? Do your drivers have CDLs? Do they have a recent medical examination certificate? Things like that raise your awareness about things you can do to help protect your passengers. Finally, we talked about the hours of service, the 10-hour limit. I won't reiterate on that too much. You know about the need for them to be in compliance with that, and the option of maybe an alternate driver or an overnight stay, however that part is going to work it out. All right, so the way to get there, that was the ABCs of step one. We're at step two, the three-step process. I told you it might be a little confusing. But you can get to the Safer app either through our website, or you can also check on a driver's history directly through the website. And the third and final step would be reporting those safety issues. It's a sort of a screenshot of our National Consumer Complaints database that allows you to file a complaint against a carrier. Please don't file a complaint against a carrier if what you've got is a safety emergency at that moment. Dial 911. This complaints database is intended as a post-trip complaint database, if that makes sense. We do investigate, we do look into it. If it's an issue that requires our intervention, that information is noted on that carrier's record and does go toward their scores. So it isn't unheeded, but it's not going to help you if you've got an emergency situation right then and there. You need to call 911. All right. So we talked a little bit about the SaferBus app and what it's going to look like. You can download it. Oh my gosh, I think I saw 5 different links to it on the web page. So once you get to our public web page, there's no mystery at all about this. It'll be evident to you. There are self-help guidebooks. There are any number of resources available, including information we'll provide to you at our booth when you stop by. But basically it looks like this. It'll work on your iPhone or Android. You would punch in your your carrier name, and up would pop the information about that carrier. It shows every carrier with those letters or names in its name. For example, we've got ABC Bus Company that we searched for, but here's ABC Bus Company Com. There's a difference. Eastcom, Westcom, those are not the same companies, even though they have similar names. You gotta be careful for that. But let's say you're looking at an ABC Bus Company, you want to learn a little bit more about them. You would click this plus sign and it would drop down additional information about this. How many motor coaches in their fleet or other vehicles? What's their address? Information of that sort. And then here are the icons that will open up for you, each of those basics that we talked about. They're given as a percentile in comparison to other carriers who have had violations written out for that same type of regulation. And the higher the number, it means the worse that they are among that group of carriers. More explanation about the details and nuance of that later. It does not indicate that they're out of service. They're able to operate, but it means that they are on our radar. You know, you look at something like this, they've reached their intervention threshold when it comes to hours of service, okay? Because the intervention threshold's at 50%. Again, the higher their number, the worse they're doing in comparison to other carriers with those same number of violations, same fleet size, vehicle miles traveled, those sorts of things are all in the mix. But it's important for you to sort of know what this stuff is when you're seeing it. We appreciate that's a lot to digest right now. Again, we have some single-page helpful information is going to help you digest really how this works, what it means. I don't want to get too deep into the rabbit hole on this, but absolutely we want to thank you for this opportunity, and by all means, please stop by. If you don't have an appointment and you have some extra time, again, I will be there, so you might have an appointment with Brian, but if you hadn't made one or wasn't available, stop by anyway, get some of our information. It's free, we've got a lot of it, and we'll be happy to answer any questions. I can email you stuff. You know, just let's work together to save lives. This is a message that reaches every nuance of society, every religion, every political stripe. And we, again, thank you so much for this opportunity to be here. Well, thanks. Mac has invited me to take a few questions. I think that a lot of what might be available in our printed format might be helpful to you, but certainly if there are some things that you'd be curious about right now, I'll certainly do my best to try and help you with those. So do we have any questions out there? Did it all fly back too fast? Yes, ma'am, right here.
What if the bus company you're looking for is not listed at all?
If the bus company you're looking for is not listed at all, there are a couple of things that are possible. Sometimes bus companies work or they're operated by another carrier entity. And so if you were, for example, to be looking for a company that was leasing its vehicles to another operation, it would be that other operation that's responsible for it. That is certainly something that needs to be specified in the contract terms and conditions anyway. So yeah, that's a nuance that the application is equipped to search for known entities, but you've got to know what name to put in there. That brings up a good point too, if I may. If I were to show you on a slide or so back, there are two options. If you're going with the Safer Bus app, it typically means you either know the name of the company, or you know their MC number or their DOT number. If you don't know that stuff and you're just looking for, hey, what number of carriers are out there? I need a 9 to 15 van for this small group that we're just going to go, you know, 2 states away, but it's a small group of, 12 people. Then this part of our website allows you to search for every available carrier within that zip code region that would provide transportation services for hire and the types of vehicles that it's allowing or has in its fleet, I should say. Maybe you don't always need a motor coach. Maybe you need 6 motor coaches. You've got a huge group. You need to be able to search what your options were, and the way to get there is through our main webpage. The Safer Bus app is equipped to do that. It's really, again, designed more for if you know the name of a specific carrier and or their DOT number, punch that in and it'll give you that stuff to pull up. But in the unknowns, and you need to know how many are available and what their fleet size is, all of that, and the safety information and the basics, their safety rating, all of that will be available through our webpage. Other questions? Yes, sir.
That was a lifesaver for me, but then an older guy using the internet, I know if I look up the company, I can find their safety record, but there's nowhere where all the companies in one state are listed in order of rating. Is there? You have to look up each individual one?
You do. It's alphabetized. The list is there because various carriers do use DBA names. They may be, as I say, operating by another company or leasing. And frankly, if it's a company that doesn't provide interstate transportation service, they're not crossing more than one state, we might not have them in our records because it's maybe a small enough organization that they're only using vehicles that don't fit the commercial motor vehicle definition of our regulations. We're getting into the weeds a little bit on that, but that would be one possible reason. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I was just looking somewhere you could take the top one in a state, so you have to do it one at a time to find that.
You would return a list to you alphabetically of all the registered carriers that we have by name with their DOT number, et cetera, and then from there you drill down to their safety record.
Great.
Other, sir, thank you.
I got a couple of questions. On the page where you showed the ABC truck company or a bus company,
Yes.
like four of them listed, was there any icon that would indicate that each of those, whether or not they pass your regulations or not, or you have to click on each one and go interior before you know that?
Well, passing the regulations is sort of that's a wide open issue. Any carrier can be in violation of certain of our regulations. It doesn't mean they're out of business. It doesn't mean that they're not allowed to operate, more importantly. If they're not allowed to operate, then you'll see that. It'll show not allowed to operate.
But not until you select them.
But not at, I'm sorry?
Not until you select them. Not to operate is designated at the very first cut of that information. You go back to the list.
To the where?
List of four companies that you,
Right here. Yeah. This one pops right away. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
That one you know right away. There's no way, no how, no fooling you should be setting up a contract with this carrier right now. Now, that carrier might absolve itself of the issues, and under our visit of a compliance review where we go to that carrier, look at those vehicles, driver, their records, whatever those issues were that put them out of service, if we can verify that they have made amends on those regulatory infractions or violations, then there are other nuances that go into the requirements for them to verify that they have come into compliance. But if that happens, that can go away. We're not out to put organizations out of business. We're out there to make sure that if people are going to hire them, they can trust them and that they're safe. And until they can prove that, they're going to sit right there. Okay? Now, when we talk about individual violations and certain types, yeah, this guy might have a high percentage of vehicle maintenance issues. This guy might have some, well, he's on our radar. You can see this orange triangle saying that driver fitness is an issue for them. They've reached the threshold, but it's not enough to put them out of service. Something that will put them out of service would be instant. This stuff is updated overnight. Okay? And that's probably about all the time I have. And I hope that does answer your questions. I invite you to please come see us and get some of the information. Go to our website. Let us know how we can help you plan safe trips, and we'll work together on that. Thanks again for the opportunity.